So today's video is on the highly requested how to write a good, decent essay. My dog's here, so if I'm looking down, I'm looking at her. Now, I'm not trying to make myself come across as some like amazing, always like A-star level essay kind of writer. I definitely think that writing essays does come more naturally to me than perhaps to a lot of other people. And I think I spot things like language devices and stuff perhaps more easily than other people. And yet, with me, I find it very much depends on the question as to how I do. It depends on the question, the extract, or whatever I'm doing, like the poem chosen. And that's kind of the annoying thing with English, is I never feel prepared enough because it is such a in the moment kind of thing. Regardless, today I'm going to tell you all about how you can write a good essay. Okay, so the first sort of random tip, which is sort of obvious, is make sure you are familiar with the AOs on the mark scheme. If you're not, go look them up on your specification now, okay? Because a lot of what I'm going to be saying either links to the new GCSE for AQA, which I've kind of looked up, and my English A-level, which is also AQA. So, I mean, English literature as a whole is pretty much similar, but just make sure you know what you need. Like, do you need to talk about context? Do you need to talk about typicality? Like, are they going to mark you on that? And if not, you don't need to include that. Okay, so the first big thing to writing a good essay is planning. And planning sucks in an exam situation because you have no time. I get that. You literally have like 5 minutes to 10 minutes, absolute maximum, to write a plan. Mate, you need to plan, okay? If you get given an extract, like in your Shakespeare paper or something, whether it's you read through, you are highlighting or underlining any quotes that you find relevant to your question, or anything that sticks out to you as something you could use, stick it in your plan. And some people like to do mind maps for their plans, but I don't. I find mind maps take too long. What I literally do is, so I'll underline stuff, I'll write a few like scrappy words of like things that I've noticed or things that are relevant to the question, like potential points, and I'll just literally jot them all down on the question paper, and then I'll sit back once I've like gone through and like thought stuff, and I'll be like, right, what's actually decent out of what I've written just now? And anything that is, I will quickly number in order of like when I'm going to talk about it, and that is my plan. Right, so the biggest secret to doing well and writing a good essay in English literature is relevance. You need to be relevant to that question that is set. You can be the best essay writer ever, but if you are not answering the question that they have explicitly given you, you will get like put down into a rubbish band, and you want to be in the top band, okay? So I know that when you've got good points to say, it is so easy to get carried away with these amazing points and just not stay on the question anymore. So the way that you are going to stay relevant, yeah, is I want you to reword that question into your answer so many times. You're going to start your paragraphs with that question reworded. You're going to end your paragraphs with the question reworded throughout the paragraphs. So say it's like, oh, how do they present unfaithfulness in this extract? Then you would be like, oh, this quote blah 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 shows unfaithfulness. The author presents unfaithfulness as da 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 through the use of this quote or this device. Therefore, the writer displays unfaithfulness as da 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 da. Literally, just keep saying the keyword and think of some synonyms for the word that is like the keyword of the question, and the more times you say it, you're almost guaranteed to stay relevant. Okay, next tip. Author's name. So as you probably know, you're meant to use their surname, not like their first name. So for example, Shakespeare, if I was writing my Othello essay, I would be wanting to use the name Shakespeare at least 3 times in a paragraph, like at least. So Shakespeare conveys this through this. Shakespeare employs the metaphor da 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 da. The theme of this is presented by Shakespeare as da da da. Literally, just keep saying the writer's name. Demonstrates that you realise that this entire piece of work is a construct of the author. The characters aren't real people, they are characters that have been written by an author. Okay, next tip. Have an army of words ready that are synonyms for like suggest, because you don't want to keep saying the words suggest and imply. You can say them a few times, but you need like loads of different ones. So invokes, highlights, emphasises, displays, shows, signifies, connotes, demonstrates, I can't think of any more, but there are loads. Just switch it up a bit in your essay, don't repeat yourself. Okay, and now's a more structural point. Introduction. You should not be spending loads of time on your introduction, nor should you really need to plan it. Your introduction should be so short, if you are going to have one, 3 good sentences, and especially at A-level, your introduction is just the perfect way to tick off more of the AOs on the mark scheme. So as long as you stay relevant, it's a good way to bring in some context, or to bring in typicality, or something about the author, or just something that is relevant to the question but not directly what you're going to be saying the whole time in your essay. Equally, don't limit yourself in your introduction by immediately picking a side. So if it's an explorative question, don't instantly be like, oh yeah, I agree, and there's nothing else that you could ever say. So definitely lean towards a side in your argument, but don't limit yourself by only choosing one side. Leave it open for debate. On to more structure. PEE. I know that this is the go-to structure in school, like, yes, point, evidence, explanation, blah, blah, blah. And while I understand that the structure of it is good, and it does work for a lot of people, I personally have never really liked it, ever. I think I've just sort of developed my own way of writing, which I guess looking at it does encompass the PEE structure, but is more advanced. I feel like PEE is so limiting, and especially if you're aiming for higher grades, I think you need to sort of break away from PEE and get more, like, expand it more. Okay, so from your plan, first paragraph, isolate a quote that you are going to use. Find a way that you are going to embed the quote into the sentence. So don't just start a sentence with your quote and then go on to explain it in a different sentence. Find a way to incorporate it. Okay, so there are different levels of analysis that you're going to do to this quote. And the first one is, when you're just putting in the quote, the first thing you're going to do as soon as you put it in is a very broad, overarching thing, like, oh, this is a metaphor, and this shows something in relation to the question, just really broad. So, right, okay, so I might give you an example. Right, let's analyse a quote from Othello. So, Shakespeare writes in Iago's dialogue, in Venice they do let God see the pranks they dare not show their husbands. So my first point would be like, oh yeah, broadly this quote demonstrates unfaithfulness, or whatever the question is, just more broadly. Okay, next, so I'm gonna go slightly more in depth. I'm going to zoom in on the word Venice, and I'm going to say, okay, this is an allusion is another device, this is an allusion to the context, which at A-level you have to get in, the context of the 1600s. Venetian women have a reputation to have more lax sexual restrictions, and therefore Iago is playing to this reputation and therefore making Desdemona seem unfaithful through the Venetian reputation. Okay, so next, still on the same quote, I would look at the quote again, think, right, what can I say? Biblical imagery in the use of God. Then again, I could talk a little bit about context. I could say the prevalence of religion at the time. I could talk about the fact that Othello is a Christian convert. Then again, I will look again and I will make another word level analysis point. So the aspirate, voiceless, glottal, fricative H sound creates a soft whispered effect when spoken on stage, seeing as it is a play. Therefore, it creates a tone of suspicion and highlights the unfaithfulness through this tone of secrecy. So with that, I've got my word level analysis in, which is great. I've analysed some sounds. And also, another huge point is I have made reference to the form. So if it's a play, you've got to show awareness that you know it's going to be performed on stage and the implications that that is going to have on Shakespeare's choice of writing. And if it's a poem, you're going to think, okay, maybe it's a sonnet, and a sonnet is written for love. Therefore, why is that relevant to the presentation of love? Maybe it's going to be more an idealistic love if it's a sonnet form, and so on, so on. Equally, to show awareness of the form, you need to be very careful saying either reader or audience, because obviously if it's a play, you've got to write about the effect on the audience, whereas if it's a poem or a prose novel or something, then it's going to be the reader. So as you can see from that, you literally just write so much on one quote, and you can back it up with another little quote or something. But what I'm trying to hammer home is that you need to write big paragraphs on little evidence, if you get me. So literally analyse the hell out of that quote. At school we call it micro and macro. So you have your micro analysis, which is like bam, zoom in, word level analysis. What does this show? What does this sound show? What does this word show? Then you have your macro analysis, and you take a step back and you think, how does this little quote relate to the context and the typicality and the text as a whole? So you're addressing not only the little things, but the big things in relation to the question. Okay, so this tip is a bit more specific to comparison essays. So to do with the structure, each paragraph must start and end with a comparative point between the things that you are comparing. So have a point in mind, like male dominance is presented in both this novel and this novel, but blah blah blah, in this novel it is shown as this, and then write a whole paragraph on how it's shown in that novel, and then next paragraph relate it to the other novel. So I really like to think of this structure as a diamond. Here we go, I don't know if you can see this. Okay, but so this point is a point you are referencing with the text together, yeah? So they're both similar because of this. Then you're going to branch out into one novel, you're going to do a paragraph on that novel, come back quickly to the point, then go into this novel, then write a paragraph about this novel, then next point you're going to bring the two together again, and then go out again with your comparison, and in, and out, until the conclusion. Boom. Okay, next tip. Don't forget about structure. Structure is a great thing to get points on the mark scheme of, and I find it really easy to talk about. So if you've got a poem, talk about metre, enjambment and caesura and all these great things that will have an impact on the text and the question. And if it's a play, like a Shakespeare play, talk about iambic pentameter, talk about blank verse, free verse, and all those sorts of things. Talk about whether it's written in prose and the implications of that, like it's more friendly, like the characters get on better, so they're more comfortable, so they talk in prose rather than iambic pentameter, so on. And at the end of the day, another tip is you need to be good at just the way you write. You can have great points, but if you write them sloppily, then you're going to do badly. That is just, unfortunately, the way it works. So the sophistication of the way you write comes a lot with practice and a lot with your vocabulary in general. So I greatly recommend that you do some essays which are actually not timed, and instead your main focus in writing those practice essays is the way that you write. So every now and then, maybe look up a synonym, like a better, more eloquent synonym for a word that you would have used. Just make this essay so well written in the way that you're writing, so that when you eventually need to do it in timed conditions, you've got a better understanding of how you need to write it. Next tip, include some alternative interpretations. Like at A-level we do like a Marxist response, a feminist response, a modern reader as opposed to a contemporary reader, all those sorts of things, and how people would view it differently or argue the question the opposite way. Equally, when you're arguing your points, say it may argue, it could argue, so that you're not limiting your viewpoint to only one way, so you're appreciating that it could be the opposite and it's just your opinion. Talking about your opinion, I personally don't recommend using first person, like, oh, I think that, I agree that, and I'd personally stick to third person because you come across as more knowledgeable and sophisticated if you're saying things like, one may argue that, da-da-da, rather than I agree that. And finally, you conclude your essay having looked at all your other alternative interpretations, blah blah blah, and you come to a bit of a overall summary conclusion, but don't repeat the points you said, just come to a new short conclusion. Jesus, I know that sounds like so much. Like, that is the issue at A-level. There is so much to say and so little time, and time is the biggest struggle in English. I mean, I can write an essay, yes, I can write a great essay, sure, but can I do it in 45 minutes? Not always. And that's why practice is key, and again, awareness of what you need to do to write a good essay. So hopefully this helped you, and if it didn't, I'm sorry. Please do like this video if you enjoyed it, and if you'd like to see some more similar ones like this. I feel like I literally poured all of my tips into this, like literally all of my tips. Like, you know how I write essays now. So please like it if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe if you're not already subscribed. I post every single Wednesday. Follow me on Instagram, jade.bowler. Follow me on Twitter, unjaded_jade. Thank you so much for watching. And I was thinking about this, I actually take English, maths, and 2 sciences for my A-levels, so I'm here to help you guys.